Welcome to My Life, Tanya Applied, with Rabbi Simon Jacobson, a journey into the deepest teachings of Torah and their application to our personal, emotional, and psychological lives.
A good tavach, a good week. We continue our journey in the life-changing Sefer HaTanya. This program is made possible by Rena Lights LLC and is in honor and memory of Rabbi Yosef Alevi Weinberg Olav HaShalom, Moshe Pinchas HaKohen Katz Olav HaShalom, and Rabbi Yael HaKohen Khan Olav HaShalom. It's also in schus and merit of Rabbi Zev Yecheskel HaKohen and Risha Katz Le'erich Yomim V'Shanim Tevis for many long, healthy years. We're up to chapter 25 in Tanya, Perek Chav Hei, which is every chapter in Tanya is fundamental, but this concludes an entire section in Tanya to explain the most important point of all, which is what the basis of all of Tanya is. On the Sharblat, on the cover page of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe wrote that this sefer is miyusad on the pasuk Kikorav Elecha Adover Ma'ed Beficha Belvavcha La'asesei Levayed Heitiv. Eichshu Korav Ma'ed Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach B'derech Harucha K'tzara Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach. The Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach goes at the end. So the pasuk says that Torah mitzvahs and godliness is Korav Elecha Adover Ma'ed, is accessible, is relevant to Elecha. And Elecha does not exclude anyone, everybody. Not just relevant and accessible, but beficha, belvavcha la'aseh, in your mouth, your heart, and your actions. So, the earlier part of Tanya, namely, in the chapters after the Alter Rebbe gave the whole introductions of Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Habamis, the divine soul, the animal soul, the battle between them, the three ways you measure this battle, whether it's a tzaddik, chapter 10, a Rasha, chapter 11, Beinani in chapter 12, and from there on went the Beinani, Sefer Shel Beinanim, that it's about, ultimately, a person using his faculties, using the seichel, intelligence, where the Nefesh Elokis resides, to control the heart, Me'er Shalat Al Alev, the emotions, where the Nefesh HaBamis resides, to maintain an element of self-mastery, self-control. So it's through his bonanus, that's how it begins, through contemplation, which in turn gives birth to emotions. What emotions? The bonanus and godliness, that in turn gives emotions to love and reverence, Avos Hashem, Yiras Hashem, which in turn impacts, at least to the extent of subduing and suppressing the animal soul. So even though you cannot eliminate it, because we're talking about a Beini, the average person, but you can control it. That it shouldn't affect machshava dibra ma'aseh, your actual thought, speech, and action. So the Nefesh HaBamis is there, but it doesn't express itself in any practical way. But then he went on to explain that not everybody can reach such a level of contemplation. So in chapter 16, he said, what about someone who can't reach quite to the point to give birth to actually passionate emotions to the divine, of love and reverence? So there's Yo'osolei, there's Talumes Libe, which means emotions that sense that it's the right thing to do. So you don't fully have necessarily a full-blown passionate emotion, but it's still an emotional, recognizing this is Yo'osolei, it's fitting, it's appropriate. And he continues that, chapter 17. But then comes, and that's enough to actually bring to la'aseh. So it's not b'levavcha in the fullest sense of the word, b'ficha b'levavcha, but it's enough levavcha to get to the actions, because he does his mind. He says there, like he says, talumes libe, and also what is tfunes meche, that leads to that place. In chapter 18, the Alter Rebbe begins, what about a person who even that cannot achieve even that level? of appreciation and contemplation. So Daitik Tzara. So here it introduces, even though he already made mention of it in previous chapters, but in the full picture, he introduces the concept that every Jew has Ava Mesoteres, an innate, indeed hidden, dormant love, but it's there. And we discussed at length why the Alter Rebbe doesn't begin with that. Because the Alter Rebbe wants to transform a person. If you want to transform a person in the fullest sense of the word, you have to work at it. You can't just rely on dormant faculties, innate ones. They're there. And they come to use more critically because that's who you are fundamentally. But first it begins with the Aveda of creating a Korav Elecha Dover made through Aveda. But now he's explaining, even if a person cannot contemplate, the fact is because he has Ava Mesoteres, which is the Chochmah Shebenefesh, in which resides Ein Sof. So whether he knows it or not, or whether he can contemplate it or not, it's there. And we see that in a time of emergency, as he explains in chapter 18, chapter 19, that even a Kal Shebekalm and Peish Yisrael, a person who's completely lenient and very not committed, and even someone who's transgressed, when it comes, push comes to shove, like emergency situation, like you see someone struggling to live, they'll fight for their oxygen, they'll fight for their amunah, they'll fight for that because of the Ava Mesoteres. But that's just an emergency situation. How about the rest of the time? Korav Elecha Dover Meid is not just in emergencies. And the Alter Rebbe begins to explain in chapter 20 through chapter 24, which leads to where we are now, that the fact is that because that godliness is in truth the true reality, therefore the Ava Mesoteres, though it's not revealed, is always connected to that. And indeed, therefore, not just in the time of the threat of Avodah Zarah, but any time, any mitzvah, and every leisaseh is all a subcategory in the very concept of Achdus Hashem. All mitzvahs are rooted in Anechi Hashem Elokecha. All mitzvahs leisaseh and La'yeh Lecha. And these are the two polars, the two poles of divine unity. One stating that everything is godliness, Anechi Hashem Elokecha, Achdus Hashem, and the other that there's nothing outside of godliness. Mitzvah Sesa express that divine unity. Mitzvah Sesa express the negating that anything is outside of godliness. So every mitzvah is really expressing divine unity. And every Leisa says expressing the absolute rejection of Avodah Zarah. As he continues to explain those chapters, and we already elaborated and summed up. So therefore, wherever a person is doing any mitzvah, and every time they're avoiding a leisa, so they're actually invoking, they're drawing down that same sense of like in a time of emergency, because that's what the whole point is. And the fact that a person may not feel it is because of ruach shtus, that there's a moment of insanity, a blindness, a certain delusional element. Not because there's a real power of the negative, it's because we're blinded. So with all that, we can now come back to, in chapter 25, explain how Korav Elecha Dover Me'ed, for every person, B'chol Eisa, B'chol Shah, like the Alter Rebbe says, every moment. Not just in a time of emergency. Now we discussed, if a person can't contemplate, how does he know all this? So we discussed that, first of all, everybody in their level can understand it to some extent. That I'm truly connected to God, except it's concealed. And because I don't feel it, doesn't mean it's not there. And in truth, any transgression is really just like Avodah Zarah mamash. Not the intensity of its effect on you, but in concept, it's everything because godliness is everywhere. So even one iota of wandering from that is Avodah Zarah, and the opposite on the positive side. And when you do a mitzvah, every mitzvah, and learning Torah especially, like he explains in chapter 23, is bringing divine unity into existence. So the consequences are there for every detail in Torah mitzvahs, not just actual full-blown Avodah Zarah, with the emergency situation that reveals the Ava Mesoteres. So as such, now the Alter Rebbe will go and we're going to learn chapter 25. Let's learn inside. So he says, Perek Chafei now. V'zeu shekosav ki korav elecha adover me'ed v'gomer. And this, based on everything we've learned here, starting already chapter 17, as the Rebbe emphasizes, but especially 18 through 24, chapters 18 through 24, we'll be able to explain the verse, V'zeu shekosav ki korav, that rather the thing is very much within reach for you, etc. The basis of the Tanya, within reach, accessible, relevant, all those are good words for the word Korav Elecha. Shebachol eis or b'chol shah, here's the expression. At all times, and at any moment, Biyodei shalodam ubereshusei is the power and the ability. Say both words, Biyodei shalodam and bereshusei. His ability. So Biyodei shalodam means you can actually do it right now. It's in your hand. Bereshusei means he's always capable. So it really covers all the bases when you say Korav Elecha, that there's no second, no moment, and no situation where you cannot access. Adover Ma'ed, the Korav Ma'ed is always there, right available to you. Lahai ve'ruach shtus v'ashikche bekirbe, like he explained at the end of last chapter. To eliminate the ruach shtus, the delusional spirit, or that moment of blindness, that's with v'hashikha, and the forgetfulness, you can say. Mikirbai, from inside you. But since a person does have a neshama, and the neshama has the ava mesuteres, and that's always there, and in truth, the divine unity, meaning, is all pervasive and godliness is everywhere. The only reason we don't feel it is because of the tzimtzum and the hester upon him, like he explained in the chapters 21, 22. And the only reason we don't feel it is because of the ruach shtus, which is an extension of the tzimtzumim and the hester upon him. But the truth is, it's there. So imagine coming into a room, and there's a great treasure, but you can't see it, for whatever reason. It's concealed, it's covered up, and there's in your own mind the psychological blindness that you may have. That doesn't mean it's not there. So it's Korav Elecha. You just have to become aware. And that's through Torah mitzvahs, because Torah mitzvahs is not subject to the hester upon him. So when a person does that, it brings alive that the real truth of his own reality and the reality of existence, all being part of godliness. And this is b'chol eis b'chol shah, or lisker. And what's the opposite when you eliminate? If you can lahayver, to rid yourself of this blindness, of this cover-up, so to speak. Or lisker, and to remember, recalling and awakening your love for Hashem Echad, for the one God. HaMesuteres bevadei belevovei bli shum safek, which without any doubt is definitely dormant in your heart all the time. So if we didn't have that dormant love, then it would come down to a lot of work of contemplating, and a contemplation that gives birth to emotions and feelings. It would be a very difficult job. And those that can do it, can do it. But since you have the dormant love, and you have the fact that God's unity is indeed the true reality of all of existence. So what's missing? If it's all there, that it's not seen. Because we have that momentary blindness or delusional spirit, ruach shtus, and the shikha, which can also be defined as forgetfulness or shikha, not seeing it, or it remains in an unconscious, concealed state. So the only thing missing is revealing. That's a whole other story. It's not going to find the treasure. To find all of this through effort is to remove the concealment. And when you do that, then it's b'chol shah. It's all there. In simple, practical, psychological terms, you tell someone who's gone through, let's say, difficult pain or suffering in their lives, or trauma, different challenges. They don't feel that there's hope. Because one thing is saying, let me take you somewhere, let's read a bunch of books, we're going to study all kinds of methods and interventions that are going to bring you healing. That's one way of going. Or saying it's all within you, you have everything you need. The fact that you don't feel confidence in yourself, or you feel insecure or fearful, is your perspective. It's a psychological thing. It's not the truth, because you have a neshama. Neshama shenasata b'taheri. It's pure. It's a tzelem elikim. It's in the divine image. It has an avim esoteris, a chochma within the chochmas of chochma. Chochmashi is baruch, coming from the chochma of Hashem, which is one with Ein Sof. All within you right here. Now, a person may not initially accept it or believe it, but that's the work, is to discover. So then you're not going to learn a new talent, or you're going to learn a new skill, which may be possible. You say, maybe I won't be able. Here you don't have to do that. You have to uncover that which you already have. When a person can build that confidence, then it's not about going somewhere to get it. And then, of course, there are all kinds of obstacles. Here, the biggest obstacle is yourself. So that's like a tremendous chiddush. So when the pasuk says, "Korev elecha davar me'ed," it's telling us the truth. It's available, within reach, accessible, relevant, but you need to discover that. So that doesn't mean it's not work, but it's a very different approach. It's like knowing it's there, now I have to dig. It's like go dig for a treasure, and you don't know what the treasure is there. So you can dig and dig and dig. At some point, maybe it's not there, but if you know for sure it's there, it's a whole different story. And what's there? The avim esoteris, that dormant love, as well as the divine unity in everything. And therefore every mitzvah is an extension of that divine unity. Every mitzvah leisa says an extension of negating the opposite of duality, the opposite of that unity. And thus, in all these actions that we do, mitzvahs and avoiding mitzvahs leisa and learning Torah, all reveals that unity within us. V'zeu shekasuv ubelvavcha. Remember, in the earlier approach that we learned till Perek Yud Zayin, included Yud Zayin, was that you have to contemplate. And that can be always instantaneously. Now we're talking about something that could be instantaneous because it's right there. Now you can imagine what happens if you have both the avim esoteris and the contemplation. And that's the ultimate goal, obviously, to have both. But even if you don't have the ability to contemplate and develop it, you do have the dormant. So he continues now. V'zeu shekosav ubelvavcha. And this is the meaning of the words in the pasuk, Ki korev elecha davar me'ed b'ficha ubelvavcha. In your heart. Because it's one thing when we said earlier in chapter 16 and 17 where he talks about that you can contemplate that belevavcha is enough, not a full-blown emotion, but to bring to lasese, to action, as he discussed there. Beficha he talks about is learning Torah, the words. So that's also very accessible. But the belevavcha is your heart really fully feeling the passion. Meaning that you can get excited and passionate about godliness. And the answer is yes, because since it's within you, the avim esoteris part, So it's a matter of uncovering it by getting rid of eliminating the Ruach Shtus. So he continues. V'zeh shekosav u'b'levavcha. V'nichlu bo gam tchilu. And that includes, like he said earlier, also yirah. Tchilu in Aramaic is yiras Hashem, reverence. Like he explained in chapter 19, in the beginning of this discussion, closer to the beginning, that all contains reverence. Dahainu, as explained there, shaloi lifared b'shum eifim yichudei v'achdusei yizbarach. When you love something, you want to be connected to it, but also you want to make sure that you don't want to be separated in any way from his utter unity. So that's both sides of it. Both the mitzvah side, which is to connect, and Lilaisa said not to do anything that would disconnect. Because you could have a person who loves someone, but they also bring in toxins, or something that's polluted in the love. So it has to be both ways. Total unity, total love, but also reverence, which avoids anything that would separate. That would the intimate connection between us and God. Afilu b'mesiras nefesh mamish. Even if this includes, even if this means, I should say, actually giving up your life, bli shutam b'seichel musig, without any reason, or you could say understandable or rational logic. Ela b'teva eliki, but simply because of the natural divine neshama soul that is found naturally within you, I should say. So, what you see here, what is he saying here? Mesiras Nefesh, remember, that was an emergency situation that every Yid, even a Kal Shebakalim and Peish Yisrael, would give their lives if they came down with an ultimatum, either bow to this Avodah Zarah, or we kill you. So that touches their very essence, that Ava Misoteres, and suddenly comes alive. I will never do that. Someone put into you that type of, those stakes, something you deeply love, and you suddenly realize that it's on the line. So why is it that we transgress? Because we don't realize it's on the line. The Ruach Shtus makes us think it's not so bad. It means I'm not disconnected. You forget, you minimize, you underestimate all the different things that the mind does. But then you know that the fact of the matter is that every Leisa Seh, even a small Lefiyerech Leisa Seh, is also fundamentally Avodah Zarah. Because you're disconnecting. So you're ready to give your life for it. So that makes the Korav Elecha Dover made Beficha Vavcha. Because that's the connection. And that's what you need to do, is get rid of the concealment and the Ruach Shtus. So this is even to the point you're ready to give your life for it. So if you're able to give up your life, for sure, you're being asked here not to give up your life for this connection, but just to break free from your desires. Shviras HaTaivas, from your desires. Hakala mi yisuri misa, which is something which is easier than the torture and pain of death. So if a person is ready to give their life for something, because of that Ava Misoteres, how much more, you have to give away your life, but you have to give away your pleasures for this world that conceal, that continue to conceal and disconnect you from the thing you love so much. Shekorav elov adover yeser lich b'shayetzer. So therefore, going back to the Pasuk, which makes it more within reach for you, karev, and accessible for you, to overcome your evil inclination. So this explains that, because if a person is ready to give their life here, we're not even asking for that. So it should definitely be more karev, more available, more likely. I don't know, likely is the right word. More with something that is within reach to conquer and overcome your yetzer hara, your evil inclination. So that means that when it comes to Avodah Zarah, everybody understands it. It's very obvious, like I said. To use a strong personal example, someone's literally threatening something that you love most, a family member, God forbid. So what happens? It awakens in you every passion. You'll do whatever it takes. Now you come to realize, like we learned in the previous chapter, that every transgression is an utter rejection of God, not just when things seem on the line. So you realize that everything, then you begin to see it all in the same light, and as such, you're ready to do whatever it takes, including conquering your taivas. So in other words, it's not just, okay, the taivas are distracting you, or they make you more materialistic and more selfish and indulgent. That's also a good enough reason to stop them. Here we're going further than that. They're actually disconnecting you from the very essence of your own life. So imagine you realize you're putting your hand in fire. Who would put their hand in fire? The only reason you don't know that is because you don't know it's fire, or you don't know that fire hurts you. It's a very different story. That means everything is ultimately severing that connection. And every mitzvah is a form of oxygen. And when you realize that, then it's not a matter of giving up a temptation. You're just reclaiming the real you and the real connection that you have with reality. So bottom line is, the true reality is there's only godliness. Anything outside of that, even a smidgen, is already a reality that is saying that is false. Or another way you can put it, everything is ultimate unity. And even any iota that's not unity is the opposite of that. That's dissonance. And we're looking here how to overcome that. And then he says, and continues more details with this, but we'll stop here due to time. And this has been TanyaApplied.com, where you can find this and previous programs. Everyone have a good tavach and a good nechedesh. Should only be good news, and ultimately the ultimate good news, the Gula Amitis Vashleim, that comes through your futsu meinasech chutza. Good tavach.
Please join us again next week. Visit ChasidusApplied.com for archived classes and more resources.